statement here from the WNBPA, all right? They wasted no time to put a statement out. Here it says, Friday, January 9th, 2026 at midnight, the 2020 WNBA-WNBPA collective bargaining agreement will expire. Despite demonstrating our willingness at the table with the same spirit and seriousness, pardon me. Despite demonstrating our willingness to compromise.
That statement right there, that's not negotiation language. That's a declaration of war. The WNBPA just released one of the most aggressive statements we've seen in professional sports labor disputes, and the timing is deliberate. With the current collective bargaining agreement expiring January 9th, 2026 at midnight, the players' union isn't just frustrated, they're publicly calling out the league and its owners for what they're calling bad faith negotiations. And they brought out an inflatable rat to make their point. But here's what makes this different from typical labor disputes. The owners haven't just rejected the players' proposals, they literally stopped responding. 2 full weeks of silence. Left them on read. That's not negotiation tactics, that's a message. And what the WNBPA is demanding versus what the owners are offering reveals a gap so massive that some insiders are genuinely questioning whether the 2026 season happens at all.
Today's display of an inflatable rat, a universal symbol of labor protests outside of the NBA store, calls attention to how the league and its teams have handled these negotiations. By delaying and clinging to the status quo, they are jeopardizing the livelihoods of players and the trust and investment of fans, all in the name of preserving regressive provisions that no longer belong in women's basketball. So they believe that they are owed and entitled this 30% rev share. Okay.
Now let's break down what the players are actually asking for, because the rhetoric about pay equity and transformational agreements sounds great, but the specific numbers tell a very different story. The WNBPA wants a 30% revenue share based on gross revenue, meaning before the league pays for any expenses. They want a salary cap that reaches $10 million per team, which would push maximum individual salaries north of $3 million annually. And they want these numbers locked in regardless of whether the league is profitable. The owners' counteroffer? They've proposed a system where players receive over 70% of net revenue, meaning that's after expenses, with maximum base salaries reaching $1 million in 2026, plus a revenue-sharing component that could push total compensation to $1.3 million for top players. On paper, that sounds reasonable. 70% of net revenue is actually higher than what NBA players get, but here's where it gets complicated. The players don't trust the net revenue calculation, and they've got historical reasons for that skepticism.
That is what the WNBPA is referring to, and that is what the WNBA owners are not doing, because as they said, if they agree to what the WNBA players want, they would lose $700 million. So here it says, and they're pulling the, oh, you're jeopardizing players' livelihood. No, y'all jeopardizing players' livelihoods. Y'all been playing games with the negotiations. What are you talking about? Y'all playing games with people's livelihoods. Players care deeply about their fans and take pride in honoring that loyalty.
Let's address the elephant in the room that the WNBPA statement danced around Caitlin Clark. Because when you read between the lines of phrases like setting the next generation up for success and the revenue that would not exist without player labor, what they're really saying is, we deserve a cut of the Caitlin Clark windfall. And that's where this negotiation gets messy. The numbers don't lie. When Caitlin Clark plays, WNBA viewership averages jump to record levels. When she doesn't, ratings dropped 55% compared to games she appeared in during her rookie season. Unrivaled, the new 3-on-3 league that was supposed to give players leverage in these negotiations is struggling to find an audience without her. The league's new media rights deal with Disney, Amazon, and NBC, worth $2.2 billion over 11 years, was negotiated with broadcasters who explicitly asked about Caitlin Clark's involvement and schedule. So here's the uncomfortable question the WNBPA doesn't want to address directly. If one player is responsible for a disproportionate amount of the league's new revenue growth, should the entire player pool benefit equally from that? The union says yes, absolutely. and that's how collective bargaining works. But the owners are looking at those numbers and thinking, why would we agree to pay everyone more when the increased interest is this concentrated?
Or drop more than 55%. I think y'all are overvaluing yourselves, in my opinion. But that's just me. It says, make no mistake, pay equity is not optional and progress is long overdue. We urge the league and teams to meet this moment. The players already have and will continue to do so. The owners are not about, and that was the crash out statement from the WNBPA. They're trying to pull the sympathy thing again. You're putting people lives and livelihood in danger. Y'all trying to pull the women equity thing. Listen, y'all don't bring in what the NBA.
Now here's where the owner's silence becomes a negotiating tactic rather than just pettiness. By refusing to respond for 2 weeks, they let external factors do the talking for them. Unrivaled's viewership numbers came out, Nissadam to Spointing, Project B, the alternative league some players have been whispering about, still hasn't announced concrete details beyond employing 66 players, and nobody knows if those will even be current WNBA players. The leverage the WNBPA thought they had, the threat of players sitting out or jumping to alternative leagues, is evaporating in real time. And the owners know something else that's crucial. Caitlin Clark and the other marquee rookies from the 2024 draft class are locked into rookie contracts. Even if veteran players strike or sit out the 2026 season, the league could theoretically operate with replacement players, rookies, and younger talent. Would the product be as good? Absolutely not. Would it be watchable enough to fulfill broadcast commitments? The owners seem to think so. That's a brutal calculation, but it's the reality of where the leverage actually sits right now.
Bring in, so don't try to pull the male woman basketball thing, please, respectfully. I want a deal to get done. I want to watch y'all play. I'm a fan of y'all game. I think it's some really good players and all of that. But I think you guys need to be a little bit more realistic, and the owners are not about to bend the knee to these players, man. They're just not. It's not gonna happen. And if that's what they're expecting, then they honestly can just forget about it, bro. Like, I mean, they can forget about it. Let me see here. Boom, let's go right here. This is on USA Today now. It says in the latest offer, the WNBA proposed a system where players will receive an excess.
Let's talk about the specific language in that WNBPA statement, because every word was chosen carefully. They accused the league of undervaluing player contributions, dismissing player concerns, and running out the clock. That last part, running out the clock, is particularly telling. In labor negotiations, running out the clock is actually a legitimate strategy when you believe time is on your side. The owners clearly believe that the closer they get to the deadline, the more pressure falls on players who need those paychecks. The inflatable rat outside the NBA store in New York that's borrowed directly from Construction Union Playbook. It's a symbol that says, we're willing to get ugly, we're willing to make this public, we're willing to embarrass you. But here's the problem with that strategy in professional sports. Fans don't always side with players in labor disputes, especially when the players are demanding what sounds like unrealistic compensation compared to league revenue. The WNBA lost roughly $40 million in 2023, according to reports from multiple financial analysts covering the league. The 2024 numbers aren't public yet, but insiders suggest the losses narrowed significantly thanks to the Caitlin Clark effect on ticket sales and merchandise. Even with that improvement, the league isn't profitable yet, so when players demand 30% of gross revenue while the league is still operating at a loss, the optics are challenging. The owners can point to their balance sheets and say, we're literally losing money subsidizing this league because we believe in its future, and you're accusing us of undervaluing you.
They have an issue with that. It just seems like there's a lot that they're not on the same page about, man. So I don't really see anything getting done as of right now. But I do think that the owners are pulling some slick moves now. Now the owners are starting to flex their muscle. See, because the players for so much time kept saying leverage, leverage, leverage. We got the leverage. We got this. We got that. Unrivaled is tanking. Them ratings is tanking in left field. Project B, we don't know. You don't know what Project B is going to be. And Project B is only employing 66 players and not 66 players from the WNBA. People don't watch Unrivaled. Are people going to watch Project B? We don't know. They still don't have the cachet star. Y'all don't watch Kelsey Mitchell in Unrivaled. What makes people think y'all going to watch her in Project B? The WNBA is looking like, look, man, we can, as long as we got Caitlin Clark and the rookies on the rookie contracts, we can go get some replacement players and do all right. We can move on. That's what I think the owners are thinking. Get down in the comments.
Now here's what makes this situation particularly volatile. Both sides have reasonable arguments, but they're arguing about completely different things. The players are arguing about fairness and equity. They look at the NBA's 50% revenue split and ask, why should we accept less just because we're women? That's a moral argument, and it resonates with a lot of people who support women's sports. The owners are making a business argument. They're saying, we're not comparing you to NBA players. We're looking at actual WNBA revenue and expenses. The NBA generates $10 billion in revenue annually. The WNBA generates roughly $200 million. Those aren't comparable businesses, and the financial structures can't be identical. The owners point out that they've been subsidizing losses for years, that the new media deal is promising but not guaranteed to make the league profitable, and that agreeing to the players' demands would lock them into losing $700 million over the life of the next CBA according to their internal projections. $700 million. That's the number league sources have been sharing with reporters. If the owners agree to the 30% gross revenue share the players want, combined with the salary structure demands, the league would be guaranteed to lose approximately $700 million over the next several years, even with optimistic revenue growth projections. No business, no matter how committed to a social mission, can sustain those kinds of losses indefinitely.
So let me know what you think about the WNBPA statement about the WNBA and this whole situation, and them essentially running the shot clock out, and them feeling like it's a nasty tactic that the owners use. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you think.
So where does this actually end? Because we're now less than a year from the CBA expiration, and the gap between the two sides isn't narrowing, it's widening. The WNBPA's public statement was designed to rally fan support and put pressure on the owners through bad publicity. But there's a risk in that strategy. If fans start seeing the players as unrealistic or entitled, that public pressure backflips. And we're already seeing some of that sentiment in social media reactions. Comments like, "You're not generating the revenue to justify those salaries," or "Caitlin Clark is carrying the league and you want to benefit from her popularity," or "The NBA loses money on the WNBA every year and you're complaining." Those aren't fringe opinions. They're showing up repeatedly in response to the WNBPA's statement. The owners are betting that as the deadline approaches, the players will blink first. They're betting that veteran players who depend on WNBA salaries, even if they're lower than desired, won't actually be willing to sit out a season. They're betting that alternative leagues like Unrivaled and Project B won't provide sufficient competition for talent. And most importantly, they're betting that they can weather a work stoppage better than the players can, especially if they retain the rookie class that's driving current fan interest. The players are betting that public pressure will force the owners to negotiate seriously. They're betting that the threat of losing an entire season will spook the league's new broadcast partners, who just committed $2.2 billion. They're betting that the momentum the WNBA has built over the past 2 years, largely on the back of the 2024 rookie class, will be too valuable to risk losing, and they're betting that their solidarity will hold even when paychecks stop coming. Here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud: both sides might be wrong. The owners might be overestimating their leverage and underestimating how much damage a work stoppage would do to the league's momentum. The players might be overestimating their leverage and underestimating how quickly fan enthusiasm can evaporate during a labor dispute. We've seen it happen in other sports. The NHL lost an entire season in 2004 to 2005, and it took years to rebuild their audience. Major League Baseball's 1994 strike killed the World Series and damaged the sport's popularity for a generation. The WNBA doesn't have the established fan base to survive that kind of disruption. This is a league that's still building its audience, still proving its viability, still fighting for mainstream attention. A prolonged labor dispute or a lost season could set the league back a decade, and that's not hyperbole. That's the genuine concern among people who actually want the WNBA to succeed long-term. Watch what happens over the next few months. If the owners continue their silence, that tells you they're committed to their strategy of running out the clock. If they suddenly come back with a revised offer, that suggests they're more worried about the broadcast partners than they're letting on. If the WNBPA starts moderating their demands or changes their public messaging, that tells you their internal polling is showing that fan sentiment isn't breaking their way. And pay attention to what Caitlin Clark does and says. She's been remarkably quiet during these negotiations, which is smart for a rookie, but she's the player with the most leverage in the entire league right now. If she wanted to, she could probably negotiate a separate deal that pays her significantly more than the CBA allows through marketing agreements and appearance fees structured around the collective bargaining agreement. The fact that she hasn't publicly weighed in on the dispute is interesting. It suggests she's either staying neutral deliberately, or the league has asked her to remain quiet while negotiations continue. The WNBPA's statement talks about pay equity and transformational agreements, but what they're really fighting for is a fundamental restructuring of how the WNBA operates financially. They want to move from a model where the NBA subsidizes losses to a model where players get a guaranteed percentage of revenue regardless of profitability. That's not unreasonable as a long-term goal, but the timing is complicated. The league is finally seeing revenue growth, but it's not yet profitable. Locking in high salary commitments now could prevent the league from ever reaching profitability, which means it stays dependent on NBA subsidies indefinitely. The owners, meanwhile, are trying to protect themselves from committing to unsustainable salary structures that could force them to shut down franchises or contract the league in a few years if revenue growth doesn't materialize as projected. They've seen what happened with other women's professional sports leagues that overextended financially and collapsed. They don't want the WNBA to become another cautionary tale. So here's my take. Both sides need to step back from their maximalist positions and find a middle ground that ties player compensation to actual revenue performance with escalators built in. The players should get a meaningful revenue share, but it needs to be based on net revenue with transparent accounting that they can audit. The salary cap should increase year over year, but with circuit breakers that prevent it from growing faster than revenue. And there should be special provisions that allow marquee players, like Caitlin Clark, to earn more through league-sanctioned marketing deals without breaking the salary cap structure. That's the compromise that makes sense. Will we get it? Based on where things stand right now, with the WNBPA releasing inflammatory statements and the owners refusing to respond, it doesn't look promising. But there's still time. The CBA doesn't expire until January 2026. That's enough time for cooler heads to prevail if both sides actually want a deal. The question is, do they? Or are we watching both sides prepare for a war that nobody can actually win? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the players' demands are reasonable, or are the owners right to hold the line? And what happens if we actually lose the 2026 season over this? Let me know what you think, and make sure you're subscribed, because this story is far from over.